For her whole life, Bobette would treat her stuffed animals as real people even if it wasn't her toy. Bobette, or Bobby as her family would call her, would ask the stuffed toys if they wanted to play with her. She would make them their own little beds, putting them to sleep and even waking them up at different times. Her father just thought she was just being a regular kid and that they shouldn't get worried because she was still a child. Her mother, on the other hand, thought something was wrong with Bobby. The conversations she would have with the dolls didn't seem like pretend. They seemed sinister, but everyone called her dramatic or crazy. Years later, Bobby was still doing the same routine and still talking to them as if they were talking back. This upset her mom, seeing as she was almost an adult still talking to stuffed toys and being creepy about it. "Bobby, why do you still talk to those things?" Turning her head faster than what seemed possible, Bobby replied instantly, "They are people and they need to be treated as such or we'll all feel the consequences." Bobby didn't look mad or sad but worried and scared. Bobby was in a complete panic, begging the toys not to do anything irrational or harmful. "Bobby, God damn it, stop talking to those dolls, they're not real. This is ridiculous." Before Bobby could react, her mom had swooped in and snatched the now worn, old toys. "This will end today." Bobby's mom brought the toys down to the garbage cans in the front yard while Bobby just stared out the window in shock. "We're all going to die." Bobette burst into a fit of laughter that was terrifying to witness. Her eyes so wide you wouldn't think it was possible, her mouth hung open as the laugh echoed out, making it almost a scream rather than a laugh. Bobby's dad, Big Bob, came into her room to see if she was okay, and sure enough, Bobby was still laughing, but this was strange. She was tucking herself into the corner of the room as if she was trying to hide. Big Bob has always been supportive of his daughter no matter how weird it got, but this was worse than anything he's ever witnessed with her. "Bobby? Are you okay?" The laughing stopped as her head slowly turned to her father. "Hi, Dad. I'm going to play hide and seek with them now. You should hide too. You don't want to be found." Nothing more was said before Bobby got into her little hole in the corner of her room that was covered by clothes and toys, but big enough for her to fit comfortably. Bobby's mom and dad spoke to each other out of earshot of Bobby. "What are we going to do, Meg? Why would you take them from her like that?" "Because, Bob, I don't want my daughter to be known as a freak. They're toys, Bob. Toys. They have value to her. You can't just take that away. Do you hear yourself? Something is wrong, Bob. That's not our little girl anymore." Furious and confused with what to do next, Bob takes the car keys and storms out of the house with the screaming woman following him, but he says nothing. Instead, he just silently leaves. Bobby's mom, Megan, was in tears at this point. Nothing to do except take out her anger on the house until she had no energy left. It was around midnight that Megan calmed down, most likely because of the alcohol consumption. Realizing that she hadn't seen Bobby since she threw away her stuffed animals, she felt the urge to apologize. No one knows if it was the alcohol or the guilt that led her up the stairs and to her daughter's room, but she opened the door and sat on the bed next to the lump that she assumed was her daughter. "I'm sorry, honey, you know that Mama loves you. I was just trying to help you. It was for your own good." And what seemed like an apology turned into Bobby's mom complaining about how Big Bob was a jerk and bad husband. After realizing her daughter wasn't going to respond to her, Megan got up and went downstairs where she noticed something was off. Surely the lights were on before, right? Not knowing if it was her by mistake, Megan stumbled down the stairs and into the living room. She turned on the light to see the room easier. The front door was wide open, her first thoughts immediately going to her husband's return. "Bob? Is that you?" Walking over to the door, Megan sees that the car is still gone and closes the door. Megan went to the kitchen to make herself another glass of wine, and when she went into the kitchen, she noticed it wasn't as messy as before. The rampage she had let loose in the house was very evident, but not in here. Did she not come in here? Did she clean while she was intoxicated? All these thoughts were running through her mind until she heard a door open behind her. It was the hallway closet that sat between the living room and kitchen. This wasn't too concerning considering the door had been broken during a previous rampage of hers. Damn door! As she went to go close the door, she saw something stopping the door from being closed. It was one of the stuffed animals she had thrown away earlier. It was the bunny that her daughter got when she was 5. The memories of her daughter crying and begging to bring the bunny home so it could have a good home brought a smile to her face. Upon closer inspection though, Megan noticed a strange red thread on the bunny's face near its left eye. Not knowing what it was, she pulled the red string out. It was a short piece of thread that you could find in a sewing kit. Immediately after pulling out the string, blood started pulling on her hands. Panicked, Megan drops the bunny to see that there wasn't any blood on her hands after all, it was all in her head. Children giggling and running around could be heard all throughout the house as if they were surrounding Megan. The lights in the house started to flicker, the doors would open and slam shut. "Bob, is that you?" Almost in tears, Megan runs to her room and shuts the door, locking it behind her. "Why can't she play with us?" a soft voice asked from the darkness, scaring Megan into turning on the lights to see the bunny and other toys sitting on her bed. She was the best friend we ever had. None of the toys seemed to move, but the voice was still there, only it was more demonic this time. "Go away. You are not allowed in this house." Megan's voice practically breaks with every word. "You're wrong." No longer did it share a voice with a child, but rather that of a terrifyingly deep voice that sounded furious. Megan saw their car pull into the driveway, thinking she was going to be safe. She ran to the living room and tried to open the front door, but it wouldn't open. She pounded on the window in hopes Bob would hurry inside to help her, but no one got out of the car. It was unclear if anyone was even in the driver's seat at all. Finally, the car's interior light turned on. It wasn't her husband, it was a faceless creature, its only facial feature being its eerily large smile that showed all its teeth. This was it. With the monster outside and the monsters inside, she decided she wasn't going to go down without a fight. Grabbing whatever was closest to her, Megan turned around and saw a shadowy, grotesque creature in front of her. Smiling. "You bastard." Megan ran at the monster, swinging the weapon in her hand at it as fast as she could. Her efforts were in vain. Bobby could hear the screams of her mom echo through the house, objects getting thrown around. She just couldn't bring herself to keep hiding. Bobby got out of her hiding spot and ran downstairs to try to help her mom, but it was too late. The creature held the woman up by her neck and she struggled to get free before a snapping sound occurred and she went limp. Bobby watched in horror as the creature started tearing her limb from limb, the sound of bones breaking, blood gurgling, and the sight of her mother's eyes fixed on her as she was being devoured. Not wanting the same fate, Bobby ran back to her room, not quiet enough as the monster had heard her run. The demonic voice is now talking to her in an almost taunting tone. "Bobby, where are you? We want to play with you. We got rid of the mean lady, now we can play forever. And ever. And ever." The voice got deeper and deeper the closer it got, but it didn't know where she was, which made it angry. Its footsteps are more hurried and frantic. It tried to lure her out. "You didn't protect us. This is your doing," but it wouldn't work. She wouldn't leave. And that's when she heard it. The squeaking wheels that she had grown to know. Her father was home. She couldn't let him get hurt, but she couldn't leave. Torn between trying to save her dad and not wanting to die a horrible, gruesome death, she froze, but only for a second before thinking it's a trick. Bobby stayed in her room, confident that she wasn't going to fall for the trick. She decided she would ignore every sound she heard, every scream, every voice. Nothing was going to trick her into leaving as it had her mom. Eventually she fell asleep, not to wake up till morning time. When Bobby didn't hear any noises, she went downstairs slowly, not wanting to see the horrible sight she had seen the night before. On her way down, she tried to convince herself it was all in her head, but sadly she was mistaken. On the floor of the living room laid her mom and dad, both half digested and torn to shreds. A knife was next to them along with a note, covered in blood, that read, "We warned you. We told you. And now they sleep forever. And you will never again." Overwhelmed with emotions, Bobby started screaming, louder than she ever had. Bobby ran to the phone to call the police, but it was dead, so she ran to a neighbor's house to use their phone. When the little old lady opened the door, she was frightened by the sight of Bobby, covered in blood and bruises and holding a stuffed bunny that was also covered in blood. She let her in to use the phone and got her something clean to wear until the police got there. Bobby was taken in for questioning about the murder of her parents. While at the police precinct, the police officer, Mr. Jones, asked her what had happened that day, and Bobby was honest about everything. Or so she thought. Mr. Jones brought in a small box television and a tape from the security cameras around and inside her house. "Do you know what this is?" Bobby shook her head. "No." "Well, this is the camera footage from your home. Are you willing to watch it?" The officer started to realize that Bobby's reactions and behaviors reminded him of that of a child, but he still proceeded with the investigation. Yes. Bobby prepared herself to see the creature, the murderer, but it wasn't as she thought. The tape showed Bobby walk out of the house and come back in with the bunny that she had loved for so long. Then Bobby walked throughout the house while her mom was occupied breaking things from the fight that she had just gone through. Bobby walks into the closet close to the kitchen and closes the door, only to come out almost 6 hours later when her mom was in the kitchen. Bobby had dropped the doll and her mom picked it up. Bobby was the one talking for the dolls. Bobby was the one chasing her mom around the house. Bobby was the one running around her mother and giggling. And Bobby was the one that had been eating her parents throughout the night. Talking to the bunny in her arms, running from invisible monsters when her conscience seemed to come back. What stood out the most is Bobby would be looking for herself. Calling out as if she was someone else looking for Bobby, but near the end of the tape she was seen writing a letter and placing it next to her parents. Kissing them each on the foreheads before going upstairs to the hiding spot she had fallen asleep in. Bobby Brokensight, you are under arrest for the murder of Megan and Robert Brokensight. In shock, the girl just watched in horror as all of the real memories from last night surfaced. She remembered all of the sights, sounds that went on, her wanting to not hurt them, but the voice in the back of her mind not allowing it to stop. I'm sorry, Mommy. I'm sorry, Daddy. The girl broke into uncontrollable sobs and curled into a ball. As specialists entered the room to de-escalate the situation, her whole demeanor changed. Bobby got calm, sat up straight, going as far as to throw the bunny she hadn't let go of this entire time on the table. A smile growing on her face. A smile. It was clear this was not a normal case. It was caused by a psychological break somewhere in her childhood or in her teen years was traumatic enough to create an entire other mind and personality to get away from being just Bobby. Bobby was sent to a psychologist to be evaluated before the trial, though a trial was no longer needed due to the fact that Bobby wasn't fit to stand trial. In fact, it was recommended that she be put into a psychiatric hospital immediately, where Bobby was permanently placed in a protected facility where she will live out the rest of her days, never knowing who is in charge of her mind.